Thank you very, very much. I hope there is enough seats. Anyway, welcome to Norad and welcome to this seminar that we have called Ukraine is looking to build back better. My name is Jorunn Nossum and I work here in Norad. I'm heading the department for the Nansen Support Program for Ukraine. I've been doing that for just a few months. So we are still in sort of a listening and learning mode, and I see that from the room. I see some known faces, luckily, but I know also that the expertise and experience in this room, a lot of people here who have worked in Ukraine for a long, long time. So very, very nice to see you here. We are here to look into financial tools, mechanisms, opportunities that can sort of unlock a potential for private sector collaboration and engagement between Norway and Ukraine. And we are hosting this seminar together with the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Fisheries and the Norwegian Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce. So they asked us a couple of weeks back or a couple of months back if we could be interested in hosting this together, and they asked, could we have this seminar in your house? And we were like, yeah, well, we can do that. But we had no idea that the interest of this seminar will be this big. And that really reflects my impression from the first months in my work as well, that the engagement on the Norwegian side for Ukraine is very, very broad. It includes actors that we in Norad are not necessarily that used to work together with. And I think also that this seminar and your presence here is reflecting upon that. And we also have quite a broad digital attendance, so welcome to all of you also following us online. So the timing for this seminar is also that a very strong, important and substantial partner to Norway when it comes to the response in Ukraine. EBRD is in Norway, paying Norway a visit now. And of course, to explore opportunities within their toolbox and their engagement is of course interesting to Norwegian actors. So thank you all for being here, and let's get started. So I'm very happy to introduce our first speaker, which is the State Secretary Halvard Ingebrigtsen from the Ministry of Trade, Industries and Fisheries. So welcome, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you so much. So good afternoon, everyone, and I'm very happy to see so many here today. I'm very pleased about that. And I think that's exactly what it shows, the interest and also the commitment among Norwegian companies to support the Ukraine. I would also, in the beginning, I would like to say thank you to the Norwegian Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce, to the Confederation of Norwegian Enterprises and the Norwegian Agency for Development Cooperation, Norad, for organizing and hosting this event. But a very, very special welcome to our guests from the European Bank of Reconstruction and Development. The EBRD has been operating in Ukraine for over 3 decades and are the largest institutional investor there, actually. Not many people know that, but it's the big numbers. Since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, the EBRD has taken a leading role in the immediate financial support to the real economy, infrastructure, the energy sector, and in other areas. The Norwegian civilian support to Ukraine through the so-called Nansen program will, as a rule, be channeled through established organizations with a proven ability to deliver good capacity and effective control. And EBRD is one of those main channels. I would like to highlight EBRD's work in the Ukrainian energy sector. The bank has been instrumental in introducing reforms and measures to reduce the risk of corruption. 2 months ago, the Norwegian government announced 1.5 billion to maintain gas and electricity supplies in Ukraine, channeled through the EBRD. This contribution will put Ukraine in a better position to tackle a cold winter and further attacks by Russia, including against critical energy infrastructure.
The meeting host will admit you soon.
At the annual EBRD meeting in May in Samarkand, Norway announced in support to the further work of capital increase to uphold the activities of the EBRD in Ukraine and the surrounding countries. I hear some echoes now. Yeah, this is a good message, but it can't be echoed so much, but okay. I hope that the EBRD can be a potential partner for Norwegian companies in Ukraine, and that's why we're having this seminar here today. I'm looking also forward to hear more about the different instruments that the EBRD today have and how our companies can make use of them to engage in rebuilding of the Ukraine. The rebuilding of Ukraine will require enormous investments. The task is simply too large for governments to manage alone, in terms of both practical work and financing. The private sector will and must play the main role in the rebuilding of Ukraine. An important task for the government will be to facilitate private sector engagement and involvement. In the short term, risk-reducing instruments will obviously be one of the most important tools. That is why the Norwegian government this summer announced 300 million Norwegian crowns for war risk insurance to support reconstruction of Ukraine. Today, I am pleased to announce that Norway will support EBRD's initiative to facilitate war insurance through Ukrainian actors with 16 million kroners this year. We are glad to be able to support the forward-leaning work the bank does to support Ukraine's needs and priorities. The speed and the scale of EBRD's response to Russia's war against Ukraine has been nothing short of impressive. The joint Norwegian-Ukrainian Commission on Trade, Business and Economic Cooperation is a platform for dialogue between Norway and Ukraine on economic matters. We have been planning a next meeting for some time, but for obvious reasons, it hasn't been done yet. But together with Ukraine colleagues, we are now in the process of finding time and place in the spring of next year to have a next meeting. Let me assure you that also the private sector will be involved in these preparations. Let me also mention that we highly appreciate a proposal from NHO and NUK to establish a working group on energy as part of the Commission. This is indeed a timely proposal that we support and are now in dialogue with the Ukrainian side to set to the formal details. We certainly hope for an expect and private sector engagement in this working group. The free trade agreement between Ukraine and EFTA is another important tool. It will be updated, and the meeting between EFTA and Ukraine is taking place today, as we speak here. The purpose of that meeting is to agree on the next steps and possibly set the dates for when the parties can meet next time for the negotiation process. We work constantly to support the business community in their engagement in Ukraine. I am pleased that Norwegian companies will be strongly present with the Norwegian pavilion at the Rebuild Ukraine exhibition in Warsaw in 3 weeks. The ministry will also be joining the delegation, and we look very much forward to meet you and other key stakeholders in the important task of rebuilding Ukraine there. We are really looking forward to this seminar, and I hope it will be a good of inspiration. I hope we'll also see the tools that the EBRD has, and also that a lot of contracts and other kind of things will come out of this conference. So thank you so much, and good luck with this afternoon.
Thank you very, very much, State Secretary. I'm not sure which mics are on and off, but I think mine is on now, isn't it? Thank you very much. So I said that the responsibility of the management of the Nansen Support Program was transferred from the Minister of Foreign Affairs to Norad earlier this year. But still, even if the management of the program itself sits here, the policy work and the strategic work around the program, the priorities as such, still sits with the Minister of Foreign Affairs under the very strong leadership of our special representative, Mr. Christian Syse, who is here with us today and who is our next speaker. So please, the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, Jorunn. State Secretary, dear friends, why are we in Ukraine? What do we care? We care along many lines. And for a government bureaucrat such as myself, it is wonderful to have this paper here, a proposition to Parliament. State Secretary, we love propositions to Parliament. And that invites Parliament to make decisions. And this one is based upon a 5-year agreement between the government and all the parties represented in Parliament. a unique, almost unique, agreement, unanimous agreement, going into next parliament, which is a 5-year program, stating that we will support Ukraine over those 5 years. And my assessment, even though I'm only a bureaucrat, is that it will expand beyond those 5 years. Why are we there? That is stated in the first line of this argument, of this paper, of the proposition made to Parliament in February. It's because it is in our own national interest. The rule of law, respect for borders, peace and prosperity. Therefore, Ukraine's interests are our interests, not only Norwegian interests, but the entire civilized world's interest. That's why we're there. We are there for a number of other reasons too, be that as a prolongation of that ambition, and that is to see to it and support as much as we can the civilian reconstruction and reform process, but also the pure humanitarian needs of people in need in Ukraine as the war progresses. Those are the reasons why we're there. And as a bureaucrat, I'm rather proud of being part of this team that actually work on this. There are several reasons, as the State Secretary pointed out as well, why Parliament has decided that we should overall rely ourselves on the international financial institutions when it comes to civilian aid, as well as the big, large, proven humanitarian organizations in supporting Ukraine humanitarian.
No.
Why? As the State Secretary pointed out, but as I know my superior, the Foreign Minister, has been subdued to as well, and I have, and Parliament I'm sure will too. There is a large number of Norwegian excellent organizations out there, both civilian side, on the humanitarian side, we have had meetings in this room, by the way, that would see themselves fit to operate in Ukraine. Oh yes, we do respect that work, and many of them will also receive support. But we stick to the international financial institutions and the big humanitarian organizations internationally for many different reasons. To make it easier for the Ukrainian side to coordinate, to make it easier for us to coordinate, to make it easier for Norad to keep track of what's happening. And because Parliament has also, of course, noted the government's ambition to take care of all the risks involved in a country such as Ukraine, but particularly in a war, in a country at war. And I believe that the government and Parliament will stick to those general ground rules. So, if you ask the government of Ukraine, what would be their basic needs? The first answer will be gunpowder and cannons. We seek to support that as well, dramatic as it might sound. I was with the Minister of International Development meeting with Ukrainian Finance Minister Marchenko in Marrakesh the other week. His basic ask was budget support. We do that as well. And then humanitarian needs such as demining. The Norwegian People's Aid being one of the premier organizations doing demining, this enormously riskful work. And then we come to today's agenda. Yet another reason is to facilitate business, reconstruction, reform, building back better. How could we contribute also on that front? By the way, Norway, a nation of 5.5 million people, are we that small? As a matter of fact, in our support to Ukraine, we are second only to the United States, the United Kingdom, and the European Union. We're not small. We're quite big, as a matter of fact. How should we then facilitate that business, as the State Secretary was addressing too? I believe, State Secretary, that the Norwegian government's business is not to do business. Commercial risk will have to be taken care of by the government, by the companies themselves. However, I do believe, and that is stated in the proposition to Parliament and discussed by the Parliament itself, that it is the government's business to assist in a playable playing ground. And that's why we're here today. The State Secretary was referring to the suggestions made by the Norwegian Confederation of Enterprise, excellent work, and the Norwegian Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce. Ketilbø sits here. It's a letter of June this year, which the State Secretary will know very well, making 4 propositions to the government. What should be done? And I know that as we speak, that the government is looking into how we should make this operational, as the State Secretary was also referring to. This will also be addressed in a white paper to Parliament, with which we are working right now. If everything goes well, it will be presented in December. And you, State Secretary, and as well as the Minister of Trade and Industry, will of course be important partners in that work. You refer to the FTU-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement. The letter also contains asks about EXFIN, Exportfinans, as it was usually called in the old days, Innovation Norway, how we could use our Development Investment Fund, Norfund, and also on a special working group on energy, as the State Secretary was referring to. Another area where we do support our business, at least indirectly, Norwegian aid being unbound. But nevertheless, the World Bank system, MIGA, the Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency, with whom we discussed at Marrakesh at the World Bank and IMF annual meetings just a few weeks ago. And then today's excellent guests, the EBRD. What's an impressive organization? We support the capital increase of the EBRD, as we discussed with politicians this morning, but also how we could contribute to the war risk insurance schemes that hopefully can be of use to Norwegian business as well. And I know that the EBRD will address this issue in a few minutes. First Vice President Jürgen, you said that we don't have to support the EBRD, but we'll support Ukraine. I dare say that it will be a Norwegian policy also to support the EBRD. One of the many reasons why we are engaged in Ukraine is that we believe in multilateral organizations. We believe in the rule of law. We believe that international coming together of minds is a good thing. That is one of the reasons why we support the World Bank Group, why we support the EBRD and other international institutions. We believe in the multilateral system. We will show the world, if they care to see, that we do believe in these organizations, and we do believe in your organization, sir. State Secretary was also referring to the Rebuild Ukraine conference in Warsaw. Will you, sir, will be there. I will be there as well, representing the foreign ministry. So, summing up, hopefully, the white paper that will be presented to Parliament later on this year will then, hopefully, be conducive also to Norwegian industry, that you will find interesting parts there that could be of use. And today's issue, of course, being the EBRD, which also will be handled in that white paper. My final note, speaking from the Foreign Minister's point of view, I think we've been pretty impressed with the Norwegian Confederation of Enterprise. We've been impressed with the Norwegian Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce and their diligent work and good suggestions. So thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Christian Syse. I think our next speaker is hopefully with us online. I'll just wait for that before I introduce him, I think. Mr. Naim, can you hear us?
Yes, of course.
That's good to hear. So, as also Christian said, of course, one of the key principles here that we don't do anything really before talking to our Ukraine partners, listening to their needs, their priorities, which are also shifting, and trying to understand also development and on the ground and in the country. And I was in Ukraine last week, and I had the pleasure of meeting Mr. Naim, who is heading the State Agency of Reconstruction and Development. I met you together with the Minister of Kubrakov from the Ministry of Infrastructure and the Restoration. And I must say that before I went to that meeting, I thought I was working in a complex agency, but the responsibility and the challenges that lies even today, but also sort of in the years to come, are quite enormous. And I was also very impressed by the meeting that we had. So great to see you again, Naeem, and thank you so much for taking time to be here with us. Us are about up to 200 people representing different private enterprises and actors, organizations in Norway. And of course, here with the interest of looking into opportunities for collaboration and cooperation and to listen to you. So please, the floor is yours, Naeem.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me, for inviting me once again. And it is indeed a pleasure to be here today to share with you the initiatives of the agency and the prioritized needs of Ukraine in the short and medium term. As we discuss these priorities, I'd like to break them down in three distinct categories, each of which plays a crucial role in the development and security of our nation. But before that, I will again thank all Norwegian people and all Norwegian officials and politicians, those who supported us from the first days of the war. And indeed, we met in Kiev, and we had very good meeting, and we have very good cooperation with the embassy and with our partners there. So for this moment, I will tell the three main priorities that we have in our agency. First is everything, of course, which helps us to proceed our fight and to win in this war. And that is very important for us to stress, because no one in our country can be out of this box, out of this framework, and out of this fight. And of course, our ministry and our agency, we are not involved in war itself, I mean, in fighting or in some military issues, but regarding protecting our facilities, regarding logistic issues and delivering everything to the front line and those regions which are occupied or deoccupied, those regions which were affected, and those regions which are very close to the front line, especially when we're talking about hospitals, about military guys who needs medicines and food and everything, is our crucial and main priority for this moment. So, and of course, and regarding that, we are talking about infrastructure support. One of our primary focuses on the support of logistic and the assistance to our armed forces by constructing and rebuilding roads and bridges. And regarding that, I'm grateful to all our partners who helping us with the artificial bridges, with the temporary bridges, with different other facilities which can help us to avoid this crisis when some of bridges or roads are destroyed. These logistical roads are the lifelines that keep our country functioning, actually, especially in times of crisis. This involves complex tasks, including the maintenance and the development of port infrastructure, bridges and roads, as well as border crossing points. These elements are essential to ensuring the smooth flow of goods and services throughout the country. And I will stress here that in parallel with war, with everything we have, and you know our situation, and you know all our disasters we have on our territory, we still are working, and our business are working, and the industry working. And for us, one of the priorities to help to export all our goods outside to Ukraine, because for this moment, this is the only one source of income for our country. And after closing and a blockade of our sea harbors, 70% of all our cargoes now are going through roads by carriers and through our checkpoints with the European Union. And of course, it makes big problems on our border checkpoints and our roads and bridges, which are overloaded with trucks, because we never suspected that this amount of cargoes can go by these roads. So when these roads are efficient, it not only facilitates the transport of goods, but also helps our military to defend our borders effectively. The second part of our priorities is, of course, protecting our power grids. The thing is that starting last October, our main energy grid generation and distribution was shelled by Russians, and for this moment we have kind of half of our generation distribution was somehow damaged. We even was about to have blackout last year, but this year we are much more prepared. And part of our work is to protect our energy facilities and substations, which helps us to distribute energy with the different levels of protection from shrapnels, from drones, and from heavy missile. And this is one of the critical aspect of our work which involves the protection of our generation and distribution grids. While I can't go into too much detail on these two security concerns, I can emphasize the vital role that these grids play in ensuring a stable power supply. And the reliability of these grids is crucial for maintaining essential services, supporting economic activities, and safeguarding our national security. And last and not least, but very important part of our work is the capital repairment of social infrastructure and buildings. The thing is that almost 40% of all inquiries from our local regions and local authorities, it's about housing. People need a safe and comfortable place to live, especially in these challenging times. I understand that we cannot provide all comfort and all conditions which can help people to feel comfortable, first of all, because of security reasons, but at least to build up and to repair these villages and cities and different facilities which can help people to at least have water, energy, and other issues. It will be very important for us. So capital repairs of social infrastructure buildings, such as school, hospitals, and public spaces are essential to ensure that people have the necessary infrastructure to return to and rebuild their lives. And one notable project is in this category, the construction of the pipeline following the explosion of the Kakhovska dam. I think you know about that. We had this explosion in June, and for this moment we are building in 3 months in a row, 24/7. And we are proud to share that we are on track to complete this project within the next months. This accomplishment is significant because as it will provide potable water to more than 1 million people who were left without this essential resource in the aftermath of the disaster. And this is 144 kilometers of water pipeline. It's 56 water pipe stations, and we are ready to provide this water. And I think we will finish these prominent projects next month. In general, our efforts are centered around these three core priorities: ensuring the functionality of our logistic roads, safeguarding our power grids, and of course, rebuilding social infrastructure. These initiatives are essential. Not only for the immediate recovery of Ukraine, but also for its long-term development and resilience. So I would like to express my gratitude to all the dedicated individuals and organizations which are working tirelessly to achieve these goals. And thank you also for your continued support and partnership. And of course, we are ready to share our plans for the future cooperation, and will be very happy if Norwegian companies and business can come can be involved in this kind of process, especially when we're talking about tenderings and bidders and those restoration projects on the local level. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Naim. Thank you for your time and thank you for being with us. So our next speaker and one of our main guests, Jørgen Richtering. Is that how I say it?
Perfect.
The first vice president at EBRD, and it was mentioned by me also in the introduction, but also by Christian and the state secretary, what an important partner EBRD has been to us, especially in the Nansen support program. And I said I was in Ukraine last week, and then your organization is being referred to by several ministries, by Naftogaz, by Ukregro. So very, very comforting to hear that. Very happy to have you here. I think for quite a few of the partners here within this room, you are not necessarily that well known. So really to understand your organization, to understand your operations, to understand your toolbox, so to say, is of great interest to us. So welcome, and the floor is yours.
Well, Thank you very much. And I have to say, after the introduction from the State Secretary and the Special Envoy Christian, actually, you don't need me anymore, because really nice what you said. I do have quite a long PowerPoint, and actually part of it will also be done by my Ukrainian colleague, who is now based in Warsaw, Mark Margaletsky, who you will hear a little bit later. But I don't think we should go through all the slides, because I'm sure the organizers actually can send it to all of you. So let me start with two things which are not on the slide, and maybe they're related to why I'm wearing today this one, although I'm not Norwegian and I'm not Ukrainian. EBRD, our love for Ukraine is not only recently. Actually, before the war, EBRD was the largest institutional investor in Ukraine. Every year, we invested around 1 billion euros in Ukraine. So when the war started, of course you can say, but wait a minute. We had a portfolio of about 2.5 billion euros there. We are a bank. We better be careful and not to further invest in a scenario where you don't know if you get your money back. Well, we felt differently. We actually felt we had more than a moral obligation to actually step up, if anything. And already at the beginning of the war, we made a commitment as EBRD. Last year and this year, we will invest a minimum of 3 billion euros in the country. So remember, 1 billion per annum before, 3 billion in 2 years. So we actually increased our investment in Ukraine. And the fact that you might say, okay, these are nice words. Actually, last week, we already reached the 3 billion milestone. So this is the reason for the Ukrainian thing here. But why do I wear today also the Norwegian flag? Okay, it was free there, so I grabbed it. It is actually because you're very, very instrumental towards this 3 billion. Because as a bank, we also have to be mindful of our own financial sustainability. We are a bank with a AAA credit rating, but you cannot take too much risk, and certainly not in a country which is at war. So we've said, and this is a little bit like that, so don't come with difficult question afterwards, about 50% of this new investments need to be covered by donors, guarantees, money, and so forth. And there, Norway actually played an incredibly important part. And as both of you said, you are not a small player. You actually are, for us, the number 2 donor behind the US, and really going strong. Knowing that, I do need to cover a few of the slides, at least. And not everybody knows who EBRD is indeed. Maybe, I have my own clicker, that's always good. So just a few things. And let's see if I can find, no? Okay, I do it like this. So we were established in 1991, so over 30 years old. 1991, what happened then? We were established after the fall of communism, after the fall of the wall, the end of communism, with the aim to actually make sure that the old communist countries actually would transition towards our way of thinking, market economy, transition towards that. Yes, I know we were not successful in all countries. We are owned by 71 countries and the European Union and the European Investment Bank. And you see here who these are. So the EU 27, the majority of slightly below 55%. The US is our largest single shareholder, who were, by the way, also the first who provided us with a $500 million grant towards supporting Ukraine. And here, and we wanted to put a different slide in there just for Norway. Sorry, it was like, but Norway is a shareholder for 1.25%. So very important. And I already explained AAA rating for all the non-bankers here, and hopefully there are many. Why is it important? It's the best credit rating. It means that we are able to get cheap cost of funding, so cheap money ourselves, and this is what we will be able to pass through to our clients, potentially you. Quite interesting. If we go, you see here our capital base, 30 billion, but originally actually our capital, what our shareholders put in was 6 billion. With these 6 billion, we actually were able to invest over 180 billion in projects in our region. The vast majority is debt, but we also take real risk capital, meaning equity guarantees, and this is probably a very important slide or a piece of information. Our focus is firmly on the private sector. So a minimum of 3/4 of 75% of everything we do every year is on the private sector. And that is, by the way, also currently what we're trying to do in Ukraine as well. We're not only in Ukraine. This is the information of 2022. So you see here a few of our top countries. By the way, countries like Poland or Moldova, you wouldn't have seen them so high on the agenda the year before. It also shows you that not only Ukraine is affected by the war, but many other countries as well. But for example, when we look now at this year, it shows you we can do more than one thing. We don't only support Ukraine, but this year you will see, at the end of this year, you will see for Turkey, for example, a figure of over 2.5 billion there, because we are supporting Turkey extra after the earthquake with a special earthquake response. Probably the most important slide, and I'm sure you can get it. So what do we typically do with potential clients or clients like you? Debt, equity guarantees. Let's focus mostly on that. Typical size of our investment is between 5 million and 300 million. I know 300 million is not what a typical SME, smaller, medium-sized company is doing, but it also shows you that we're doing large projects and project financing. On the debt side, usually we feel very comfortable with everything between 5 and 7 years. But of course, if the infrastructure investments on the energy side, renewable energy, whatever it is, we can go up to 20 years, and in certain instances, actually beyond. Equity, risk capital. So if you become a shareholder in one of your companies or one of your subsidiaries or whatever, we always want to be a minority, so we will never take the say away from you. And we always want, at a certain point in time, say goodbye. You can stand on your own legs. So this is what we mean with exit. So we typically, after 7 years, would like to see how we can exit. Here you see the minority. All the other things, happy to come back if there are questions a little bit later. Sector coverage. It's a nice slide with nice pictures. Basically, every sector there is, we will cover. And maybe a few other things as well. Not sure if they're relevant for this audience, but we have specific municipal infrastructure programs. So we work with cities, we work with green cities. In Ukraine, actually, that will become increasingly important because there might be countries, or we know there are countries, who want to particularly support certain cities in rebuilding, etc. Nuclear safety, the reason why I also put that on there is we have a nuclear safety fund for Chernobyl. We are not responsible for Chernobyl itself, but we're managing the financing for that. So there are many other things as well. Then And then after that, I will hand over to what we're doing in Ukraine. Norway, EBRD, an overview of our cooperation. As I said, Norway is a founding member of the EBRD more than 30 years ago. Donors co-financing. This is not as of now. We already started our cooperation in 1991, but I think it's fair to say, State Secretary, it's particularly the last 1.5 years, that we really this become from a relationship to a true partnership. And again, I think it's very important. I know, Christian, I shouldn't say it. I know you're not supporting us, but we all do this for the benefit of Ukraine, and there we are an important conduit for you. Perhaps one, I will leave this for what it is. Perhaps this one. This is probably our value proposition for potentially you. Strong local presence. So wherever we are in all the 30+ economies, we have a very strong local office. When you look in before the war, Kiev actually was our largest office outside London, where we had more than 100 people on the ground. By the way, we still have a permanent representation, but the majority of our office, our Kiev office, has been moved to Warsaw, and Mark is also based in Warsaw. We have political leverage. In certain countries, and I'm not necessarily now only talking about Ukraine, but beyond, because many of you are also working in other emerging markets, sometimes it's important to have political, let's say, protection or an umbrella to shield you against nasty politicians, because not everybody is as honest as we are in Western Europe. So we can provide you that. We support also countries itself by with legal and regulatory improvements to facilitate private investment. We do capacity building, and I will leave the rest for now. Trade facilitation program, I also will leave it because now probably the most important part, Mark Margaletsky, our co-head for Ukraine, based in Warsaw. Mark.
Thank you. Thank you, Jürgen. Thank you, Jürgen. Thank you.
Say something?
Hello. Okay, good. Good afternoon. Yes, thank you. Good afternoon again, and thanks to the Chamber and to Norad for arranging this important event. Before I continue with the presentation, let me make a step aside and maybe ask the main question: why are we here talking about business in Ukraine? What can you say about business in the country which is in the middle of the war? And to answer this, let me put it in the perspective. In January last year, a few weeks before the war, we had our contingency planning because everybody felt that something is coming, yeah, and we had to be prepared. How do you prepare for the war, yeah? But you know, we were thinking about any eventuality. Okay, the banking system will collapse, so we have to have stock of cash. Telecom will collapse. We have to have satellite phone. There would be issues and problems with electricity. We have to have accumulators, matches, candles, literally. This is what we were preparing for. And then the war broke, and it broke under the worst possible scenario. But then when you look at the economy, banking system continued to operate. Telecom continued to operate. Energy system was surviving multiple shocks, but continued to operate. Even more so in the energy system. On the first day of the war, Ukraine disconnected from the Russian grid, and actually accelerated connection to NHO. And a few months after the start of the war, despite the military actions, Ukraine started to export electricity to Europe. And it was increasing exponentially until October last year, when there was a heavy start of the heavy bombing of Ukrainian energy infrastructure. But even despite of that, a few months later, Ukraine managed to restore its power system despite the major destructions, which can only be comparable to Second World War. So the point that I want to make is that the country is functional, economy is functional. It is not business as usual. It is business very unusual. But at the same time, let's think about it, that this situation is crystallizing the true champions in business. And businesses that can survive the war, they can survive almost anything. So this is why we continue to operate in Ukraine. We never stopped, and thanks to the support of our shareholders, including Norway, we were able to continue our operations. So let me say a few words about what we are doing. As Jürgen already mentioned, we have committed 3 billion euro new financing in 22-23. And I'm happy to say that actually it is this week that we have achieved this target. But we will not stop here, and we will continue, of course, helping our clients in the country. Of course, the situation required that we take a flexible approach, because we had a big existing portfolio of clients, and therefore we, in every possible way, we use different instruments, to help our client to survive difficult times, including deferrals, restructuring, and increasingly important, and that became a new area of attention, is leveraging, is mobilizing donor financing alongside EBRD financing for our clients in Ukraine. And Norway is actually a great example of such cooperation. And I will talk about it later, but Norway was one of the main donors for support of our operations in the country. Here is 5 key areas that we are focusing: trade finance, energy security, vital infrastructure, food security, and private sector. Here is illustration of our key features, key priorities in the main areas of our work. First of all, it's industry, commerce, and agribusiness. As I mentioned, food security was one of the priorities. And actually, for the bank, even before the war, agri sector was one of our main areas of activity, and certainly one of the most promising, not only in Ukraine, but globally, as Ukraine was rising as a global champion in agri sector. So here, the main focus is on private business and flexible approach to financing, being that working capital or capex, and that actually included also new capex, which has started even despite the war. So here is the key numbers: 395 million euro since the start of the war in 23 projects across the country. Here is some examples of our key clients. If you see, the size is from, let's say, small to mid-size to the big, to the major corporates in agribusiness. Grain Alliance, Astarta, very strong national players. MHP is actually, I would say, more than national. It's almost global player now in poultry, vegetable oil, and grain production. ArcelorMittal, one of the main international investors in the country, and our long-standing clients. So we provided 100 million of financing to support their operations in Ukraine, particularly in Kryvyi Rih, which is one of the cities that suffered from destruction. Sierzanit is a very good example. It's a Polish company with the plant in Ukraine. Again, our long-term client, but despite the war, they were prepared to increase and modernize their production facilities in the country. They are one of the main producers of sanitary equipment. And then in logistics and industrial services, we financed new development, actually, Lviv Industrial Park, which also reflects the changes in the traffic and in businesses as a result of the war, with some businesses relocating from other parts of the country to Western Ukraine, and also Western Ukraine becoming now the main logistics hub in the country. And then one of the major private equity fund, Horizon Capital, again, they were prepared to step up the operations in Ukraine, and we were happy to support them. In infrastructure and energy, we are working across different segments. It's public sector, private and municipal. We use different financial instruments, from sovereign to project finance. And here we are cooperating closely with a number of other institutions like European Investment Bank, World Bank, IFC, and NEFCA. Here again, our key projects and key clients. Number one, since the start of the war, is Ukrenergo, which I mentioned already. It's a national electricity transmission system operator. We provided more than 500 million of financing, and now we are preparing a new package together with, which is supported by Norway, for additional capital enhancement. And some significant part of the money here is actually going to restoration of Ukrainian energy infrastructure, which was destructed as a result of Russian attacks. Ukrainian railways, here again, combination of liquidity support and CapEx. And the main focus of CapEx is to remove bottlenecks on the western, on the Ukrainian border between Ukraine and EU countries, because this is where the majority of traffic has to be diverted. NAK Naftogaz, and here this is a very good illustration of our cooperation with Norway. Our facility of 300 million was complemented with 188 million grant from Norway, which helped tremendously to help Ukraine to survive the last winter season. And actually, we have additional facility for this winter season, which is currently under preparation. So important to say in this respect that our cooperation with donor countries is mutually beneficial. Mutually, I mean the three sides: Ukraine, donors, and us, because of course there are many countries who wants to help, but they don't have presence on the ground. They don't know where to start, and it's simply difficult for them to administer. And here we can help because we have the processes in place, we have people in place, we have relationship with all the key players, and we can ensure that the funds that are provided by donors, they are used as intended in the best possible ways through the competitive procurement, through the proper monitoring, corporate governance, and so on. So from this point of view, we would be happy if our cooperation would actually extend in many other areas that would be of interest for Norway and other allies. Another example is the road project, again, improving what is called Solidarity Lane initiative. The essence of this is that Ukraine traditionally was a major exporter of agricultural and industrial products to the world through the Black Sea ports. which were unfortunately under blockade, and therefore the traffic has to be diverted from north-south to east-west. And therefore, we had to invest, and our Ukrainian clients have to invest into expanding capacity on these western routes to help facilitate the trade. Another good example is Ukrposhta, the national postal operator, where we financed network development, which actually included supply of Starlinks to ensure the company operation in those areas which are close to the front line and where there are disruptions in telecom operations. Municipality is our big area. We're working with more than 20 municipalities across the country. And of course, many of them, because of the difficult financial situation, required liquidity support. But also, Khmelnytsky is a good illustration of the city which continue to develop, continue to invest even during the wartime. So here we are financing public transport project, which is supply of the new trolleybuses, which would operate in the city. And then there are examples of private projects, which is financing of the grain terminal on the western border and expansion of the container yard. And Nova Poshta, a good example of the private player, which is not only surviving the war, but is actually developing very fast and now expanding into other countries, providing parcel and delivery services. Yeah, a few words about how we finance and how we ensure that financing that we are providing is used in the best possible ways, and what are the opportunities that it generates for business. In Ukraine public sector, as you saw, we are providing a lot of financing to the key state clients in the country. Ukrenergo, Naftogaz, Ukrainian Railways, Agency for Restoration. And all this financing, procurement under all this financing has to be done based on procurement policies and rules, which basically means competitive procurement wherever possible. But of course, the wartime has its own impose its own requirement and impose its own specifics on the way it is done. And as you can see, again, one would ask what kind of procurement you can do during the wartime, but actually it is possible and it is being done. So the specifics is that it's mainly procurement of goods because many international companies they are not prepared maybe to work in Ukraine right now, but they are ready to supply equipment. And if you use example of Ukrenergo, with which we are financing rehabilitation of substations, so the arrangement is that we are tendering the supply of auto transformers. These auto transformers are delivered to Ukrainian border, and then let's say Ukrainian-Polish or Ukrainian-Romanian border, and then taken by Ukrenergo or by its partners, and then it is Ukrenergo who is actually doing installations on the site. Then procurement of works is also done, but on a limited basis, and it's mainly the companies that are already present on Ukrainian market, but there are quite a number of them, so it is possible to arrange. And of course, we are using flexible approaches to the actual way of procuring. If it's possible, it goes through the open tenders, but sometimes it can be done through so-called direct contracting, where, because in many cases the timing is crucial, and but in any case, we and our clients are conducting market consultations for every item that is being procured under our projects. And again, reflecting the risks and realities of the war, certain changes or certain flexible approach is used as to the timing of procurement. There are shorter tendering times, but then on the other hand, some more advantageous contract conditions for the supplier, like larger advance payment and flexible delivery terms, and even possibility of financing of the second-hand equipment. And here in more details, what are the opportunities and support EBRD can provide, depending you are in the role of the consultant or in the role of the supplier. So that will be, there are some references to the bank electronic procurement platform, so you will have it in your pack for this event. And then we wanted to show examples of good partnership with Norwegian companies. And actually the leading company so far is Scatec from Norway. I wanted to show you a few examples there in the Middle East. But actually there is, on this panel later on, there will be our good friend, General Manager of Scatec in Ukraine, Alina Swiderska, so she will probably tell more about our work here in Ukraine. But in the Middle East, this is probably, there are a number of projects that we have done, but this one is the most recent and probably the most revolutionary, which is the green hydrogen, one of the first projects of this kind in the country, which is currently in implementation. And we hope that it will be successful here and replicated in many other countries, including Ukraine. So thank you very much, and would be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you very, very much, both of you. Very, very informative, and I'm sure there are questions in the audience. But I will hand over to another partner and colleague, the chairman of the board of the Norwegian-Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce, another important partner to us. I'm very happy for our collaboration so far and look forward to collaborate further with you. But Mr. Kjetil Bø, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Now it's on. You can hear me. Fantastic. Yeah, it's okay. Just going to get organized. So, hello. Good afternoon, everyone. And very happy to see you. Very happy to be here, and highly appreciate that we were able to get this organized. Many thanks to Norad for taking the challenge, and I think the turnout shows that this was worthwhile. And hopefully it will be worthwhile for you after you have been through today to get some more insights. And the interest in Ukraine is tremendous. We have been working, of course, in the Chamber since 2008 with Ukraine, and more intensely since 2014, when the Norwegian government decided to step up its support to Ukraine after the events at that time, and has also been supporting the Chamber to build an organization and make initiatives that have been, I think, very much noticed over the years. So I've been on the board since 2008 myself, and we at Wickborg Rhine, which is where I spend most of my daytime hours, is a founding member of the Chamber. Now, what we're going to do now is we're going to turn to a panel discussion where we would like to hear a little bit from the companies as well on what their needs are, and also then get some responses maybe from our public sector actors to those specific issues that might be coming up from the panel. And therefore I would like to invite to the stage Mark again, thank you. Then we have Mats Tjemsland from Cambi. And we have Gustav Heiberg from Hydro Rein. Just take whatever seat you want. And last but not least, Christian, we're happy to have you here again. So, and then we would also like to welcome to the digital stage, as was mentioned, Alina Swiderska from Scatec. She's the General Manager of Scatec's operations in Ukraine. And are we able to see Alina somewhere, or are you there? Hi, can you hear us?
Yes, I'm here.
Great, thank you, good to see you. And then we also have Yulia Bereshenko from Astarta. She's the Director of Sustainable Business and International Relations at Astarta. And I think there we have you, Julia. Welcome. Can you hear us as well? If you just unmute, just check that we can hear you.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, great, super. So I think then we would like to start with hearing a little bit from the companies that are represented here today, and to understand their current Ukraine strategy, get their take on what is needed to maintain and incentivize further investments in Ukraine. And I would like to start with you, Alina. As we've heard, you are in Ukraine, you are operating in Ukraine at the moment, and Scatec is one of the leading foreign investors in Ukraine. So we wonder how you envision the long and near-term perspectives, considering the circumstances and also the critical role that you're playing in the electricity production, or at least the criticality of the electricity production in Ukraine, and what your perspective is as a company and from your personal point of view.
First of all, thank you so much for having me here, and huge thanks to Norway and to EBRD for tremendous support to Ukraine. I think with partners like that, we can have a brighter future in mind and present too. And this is really important for all Ukrainian people and businesses for keeping you with us and knowing that you are with us long term. So thank you so much. Speaking about Scatec, I don't know, I'll just do a super quick intro of what our company is doing in Ukraine. Sure. We are indeed one of the largest green energy producers in Ukraine and one of the largest Norwegian companies as well. We have portfolio of 336 megawatts of solar in 3 regions in Ukraine. Overall, these are 5 projects. And we're in Ukraine since 2018. Until now, we are fully operational. We used to have 10% of our portfolio occupied back until last year, and since then we were able to restore part of the project, and the rest of the projects are fully operational. And I know that we are lucky to have that because unfortunately energy has become the target of the Russian attacks. We've seen this throughout the last year, and we anticipate that they will continue attacks this year, and green energy was also target of the Russian military. Part of the wind plants, they have been fully 90% of them are being occupied. Part of the solar, I think 30% of the solar production in Ukraine has been either occupied or destroyed. So we understand that we're still playing a very crucial role in ensuring that Ukraine has a stable energy production. And speaking about the short-term priorities, priority number 1 is to make sure that our company in Ukraine operates in a safe and stable way. We make sure that our people are safe and that we can continue our operations as we did before. And also speaking about the short-term perspective, it's also important that we are managing well in a financial way, because unfortunately the war also left an impact on the level of payments under feed-in tariff to the companies. And last year and this year the level of payment is approximately 50%, which is an issue, of course. We're still managing to run operationally, and we're paying under our loans, but then we are not able to pay the distributions to our shareholders, mostly because of the currency restrictions, which is still an issue and it has to be somehow resolved down the road, and also because of the level of payments. And to address that issue of having low feed-in tariff payments. The government has allowed some mechanisms to kind of be creative and test new business models. And with one of our projects where we don't have the lenders and where we have one of the lowest tariffs already, we paused our power production agreement and we started trading on the market this summer. And we see that the result is quite good. It proved to be effective. And we are learning a lot from this process, and we are thinking, speaking about the long term, whether it makes sense to try this model on other projects. But here we would need to have a real discussion with everyone involved, the government and the lenders, on what to do with the projects down the road, with the operational projects, because we probably will not be able to sustain with this financial situation long time, and we are not even sure if 50% payment is the optimistic one, or there could be even less. And of course, speaking about long term, I think that we also try to see how we can add value as the current producer of energy in Ukraine, and if we can contribute into energy generation more in Ukraine. There is a lot of discussion with the government right now on the state strategy on energy, and including the green hydrogen, which is also one of the pillars of the governmental strategy. It's really long term, but we're at least trying to think through all scenarios. And the closest scenario is that we understand that the industrial consumers, they would need to diversify their energy supply. And we're talking with the different industry consumers on how we can contribute to the energy generation with them. We have the project Release, which is now mainly widely used in Africa. This is the mobile solar and storage solutions which are being leased to the customers. So this is a new business model for Ukraine. And we are discussing it right now with different partners on the applicability, and we're just testing different grounds on how we can make ourselves useful. But then we would also need support from the Norway and from the lenders and partners on making sure that these projects would be viable and possible, considering all the war and financial risks which Ukraine is facing right now.
Thank you. And I think it's very it's encouraging and very fascinating to hear how you actually manage a lot of these risks on your own at the moment within your existing parameters. Changing your business model, talking to your existing lenders, and doing real actions to sustain the business. But can we ask you, just as a final sort of follow-up question on that, is there anything then? And you said you need support for launching the lease model or other new ventures. Is there any particular specific tool or mechanism that you would like to see that would really make a difference for you?
Yes, absolutely. We have been discussing this in wider energy circles with different energy companies, and we see how other governments are trying to support the businesses in Ukraine. And the two obvious mechanisms which would be definitely helpful to bring on new investments to Ukraine, these would be the war insurance, which have been already discussed here, and that's definitely a great move and great support to bring on new projects to Ukraine. And secondly, the guarantees, offtake payment guarantees, that would also help a lot to decrease the risks of new projects in Ukraine. And then also I mentioned that we're also facing this issue of currency restrictions, that we're not able to pay the dividends to the shareholders. This is probably more the Ukrainian issue which has to be solved, but it's also an important angle to think on down the road.
Thank you. Excellent. We'll go on to hear from the rest of you, but just as a note, we're already sort of halfway into our measured time. We want to hear from all of you, and I think you all want to hear from all of us. So I will go on, and I will let all of you speak, and until somebody flicks the light switch or does something with me, I will go on. So, but I do urge you to try to at least limit a little bit so we can get through the whole panel. So, but as I said, I think we will just keep going. Now, staying in Ukraine and the Ukrainian perspective, maybe we should then turn to Astarta and Julia. And we've already seen your name on the slide here from EBRD, and understand that you are working closely with EBRD already. But not so many people here know too much about a startup, perhaps. You are the largest agricultural holdings in Ukraine, an active investor, and working on rebuilding Ukraine from within. In this various segments that you're working on, which ranges, I think, from cattle to grains to oilseeds, and also both human and animal consumption. Could you say a little bit on how your group is doing at this period of war, and how you are coping with the situation, and how you look at the, let's say, short-term and long-term future? By the way, I know that you had a few slides that you might wanted to show. If you have something that is important, please do. But if you could maybe address the question, and then we can see how we go. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Unfortunately, screen share is disabled for me, but I will try to be as quick as possible, just to introduce our company business. It's a vertically integrated agricultural and food processing holding, from downstream operating over 200,000 of hectares of farmland in Ukraine, to the largest producer of grain and oilseeds. Before the war, Astarta used to produce about 1 million tons. Our 5 core crops are corn, wheat, sugar beet, soybeans, sunflower seeds, rape seeds. We process sugar beet at our 5 sugar mills into white sugar, and we process soybeans into soybean meal, which is a feed for livestock, and soybean oil. As part of our vertically integrated operations, we also have cattle farms, specifically dairy farms, which have 26,000 cows and produce over 100,000 tons of milk annually. Compared to our peers in Ukraine, we were relatively lucky. Only 4,000 hectares of land in the north of Ukraine were occupied at the beginning of the war, but we were able to return this farmland into full operation for spring planting last year. Nonetheless, Ukrainian agricultural business is going through very difficult times, and this is because the whole Ukrainian agriculture is producing 5 times more of output than the domestic consumption. So 80% of corn, wheat, and all other products need to be exported. The main routes to export those were deep water ports on the Black Sea, near Odessa, Mykolaiv, and when these ports became blocked because of the Russian action last year, we have to resort to suboptimal logistical routes, which is road, rail, shallow ports on the Danube River, and competing with steel, metals, and other exporters from Ukraine with agricultural exports, which made the logistical cost of exporting grain out of Ukraine prohibitively expensive. At some point of time last year, the cost of getting grain out of Ukraine were bigger than the actual cost of growing it. Just to put it in the perspective, so our company is also export-oriented, but we changed our crop rotation towards a higher share of oilseeds and sugar beet because we process it internally and we can export higher value-added products. But because of logistical difficulties, Ukrainian agricultural exporters cannot reach the traditional markets in Southeast Asia and Africa to feed the poorest population. We have to go through Europe. For us, that meant we were increasing production of sugar and exporting to the European market. We are increasing production of soybean meal and oil, exporting to the EU market. And we're also working on the energy independence and promoting biofuels in Ukraine. Our company was one of the first ones which started producing biogas back in 2014. Now we are looking at the next stage of increasing production of biogas for own self-sufficiency. One of our sugar mills and a soybean crusher, they are they are fed by the biogas from our facility during the production season, and off production season we are looking to supply the market. We are looking at cogeneration route, and we are also looking at biomethane. As it was mentioned in recent conferences, Ukraine can become one of the major biofuels producers in Europe and contribute to the Green Deal. And Europe has a target of 35 BCM of biomethane production by 2033, and Ukraine is capable of producing at least 10 BCM for exports into the EU. So this is so our focus currently is on biofuels, but also on increasing production of value-added projects. For example, in the soybean crushing, we would like to process meal further into a soybean concentrate, the product which has a higher protein content, and also to supply European market. It is important to underline that what we, as a starter, supply to European markets is non-GMO, sustainable products. The carbon footprint of soybean products which we produce are almost 15 times lower than the imports from Brazil or other Latin American countries. White sugar, which is supplied by Ukraine, is coming from non-GMO sugar beet sustainable raw materials. And it makes also much more sense for Europe to import Ukrainian sugar as opposed to raw sugar from another part of the world as part of the Green Deal efforts. So our sustainability efforts deserve a separate presentation and talk, but I just would like to mention that on 200,000 hectares of farmland that we cultivate, we are expanding regenerative agricultural practices, which is reduced tillage, cover crops. We submit our data into the Cool Farm tool. We track our carbon footprint not only in fossil fuel consumption in the downstream part of our business, but also in the upstream, in the agriculture.
Thank you. And I think this is very interesting, because I think we all heard a lot of buzzwords that we recognize. We know that a lot of Norwegian companies are involved in parts of these technologies, so we're very interested to explore that further at a later stage. And also from the import side, I think there are opportunities here that should be expanded. But just to come back, and one final question, just on the topic that we are discussing here today more specifically, and this goes to the financial tools, financial instruments that you think are important for you to keep doing what you're doing and being successful in in actually doing your conversion and changing your business, and also successful in the exports. Is there some one or two particular tools or measures that you would like to emphasize?
Yes, I think Alina already mentioned the wartime insurance, which has been in discussion, and only a couple of small-scale projects now in a pilot phase, we understand, in Ukraine. This is crucial for the new investment in Ukraine. We also would like to see more sustainable linked financing flowing into Ukraine. By way of example, we are financed by the EBRD, but our financing is linked to sustainability KPIs, which we agreed between us. Ukraine is capable, especially in agriculture, to produce climate-friendly products globally and for the EU market. And we need more financial incentives that will encourage and motivate the local producers to change the way these products are done. And sustainable financing here, I believe, is the right instrument, which should be scaled up to cover more and more players.
Very interesting, and I think this also ties very nicely in with the Norwegian ambitions, because I think part of the ambitions for our aid program is that it should never compromise on sustainability. So I think this matches very well with the ideas. Julia, thank you very much. It's been fascinating to hear about the business, which is very impressive. I think we all had very good ideas and input. So thank you very much for that. I think we'll leave the Ukraine now and move back to the Norwegian side. And maybe I would like to start with Mats Christian Semsland from Cambi. You're the CFO at Cambi. And your company is a leading global provider of treatment solutions for sewage sludge and organic waste management. And your solutions are used extensively around the world. And you have indeed also already had a dialogue and activity in Ukraine. So could you talk a little bit about your strategy towards Ukraine and where you see your position in your place in that landscape?
Sure. Mic is on?
Yes.
So I mean, we have been around for a while. We are a leading provider of advanced technologies for sludge management. And we first had a look at Ukraine in 2019, where it caught our attention. We did a market survey back then, saying that there's a potential for 100 plants in the Ukraine, covering all cities with a population of more than 50,000, where our technology could have a big benefit. And just to kind of provide a little bit of context on the wastewater industry in Ukraine, is that it's a market not that many know about. We, of course, mean it's a huge untapped potential to use the wastewater from industries, from municipal and cities. We see that in Ukraine there is wastewater treatment in place. Assets are aging, meaning that some of them are built in the Soviet times, so they're not running on the latest technology. So there is treatment of wastewater, which creates a byproduct sludge. And however, the sludge is not treated. It is sent for landfilling, and it's the emissions from landfill of sludge is a lot of greenhouse gases. And that's where Cambi comes in. Our technology solution significantly changed the properties of the sludge, meaning that our clients can have a range of benefits from our solution, which I think is uniquely positioned for the rebuild program in Ukraine, because we can produce up to 50% more renewable energy. Biogas can be upgraded to biomethane used as fuel, can be used as electricity. we also reduce the amount of processed sludge. We reduce it in half. So it's much less sludge to take care of, which is often a huge cost burden for the wastewater treatment plants. In addition, we also have a big benefit on the quality of the processed sludge, which we call it a biosolid. And through a Combi technology, it is a perfect product for agriculture. So all the nutritions in the sludge can be reused for the circular economy. In addition, there are other benefits. There's no odor. You reduce the capex need surrounding the wastewater treatment plant. So it's really a great value proposition for our product, especially in Ukraine. And so we do see that's a very interesting market, and we are, uniquely positioned to help out in Ukraine. And you mentioned we have been active, so we have been awarded one project in Lviv for Lviv Vodokanal. Right now the project is on hold, but the parties are still interested in continuing this project. And we remain optimistic that, of course, that's something that we can contribute with. So those are some of the elements where how we are addressing Ukraine and how we can help in the rebuild of Ukraine.
And this is really building back better.
Of course, let's go back to the Soviet assets, as I mentioned. So it's really the better part, where we come in, because often we see the biggest alternative to Combi in our technology is just continuing as before. And even though wastewater treatment plants are not a particular target, I believe, in this situation, it's still a great opportunity to modernize and really get the benefits of more renewable energy and a better product for a biofertilizer for agriculture.
And you said that your project is currently on hold, and obviously this was challenging already in peacetime. Now it's wartime. But given the discussions so far today and some of what we've heard, is there anything that strikes you as, is there something that you would say, this is what we need to be able to move maybe forward still in this current environment? Is there something that a tool or some measure that you would like to see?
I think some of it has already been mentioned. Good insurances, we have guarantees in place. I think we need to find the right balance between the risk taking that incentivizes private companies, and of course it was mentioned here, a playable playing field. I think is a great way of saying it, making us able to have a predictable and stable business environment where we can do business in Ukraine. We know the history of bureaucracy and corruption, which has had great improvements, but that's just something that needs to continue to be able to operate here. Excellent. So not one single answer. No. But I think there's a range of things that can be done.
It's a complex picture,
it's very complex.
But we have also a fairly broad range of actors here that can contribute on all of these points. So I think it's very useful to have the input. Staying in Norway, maybe I'll turn to you, Gustav Herberg, you're the head of Europe for Hydro Rein. And Hydro Rein is part of, and even with today's announcement, you are still a part of the Hydro group. And Hydro is, of course, a name known to all Norwegians, probably the most historically important company in the country. But you then work in the renewables area in Hydro. And can you tell a little bit about what your thoughts are around Ukraine, whether you have any a strategy or a policy about Ukraine and the region, and what your ambitions might be?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you very much for inviting us, even though we are not yet a part of the Ukrainian ecosystem. And also a special hello to my friends from Scatec, who are both partners and also friendly competitors of Rein. Many of you might not know Rein, but we are a part of Norsk Hydro, and we are the branch of Hydro which focuses on helping industry decarbonize, starting in our home markets, which is Norway and Brazil, and our next step is Europe. And when we are starting this journey into Europe, of course, Central Eastern Europe is one very important market for us to consider. So I think my perspective is more when we are looking at this region or this part of Europe, how are we approaching this? And I think Christian, you said in your initial words that the commercial risk needs to be handled by the companies, and we know how to deal with commercial risk. That's what we do, and we have a framework for that. And of course, we need a market that works for us. That's sort of the foundation. We don't need to go into that. But what we do not know how to handle, or we cannot handle, is the outside perspective. It's the macro picture. It's the political risk. It's the business regulations in the individual countries. So when we are now, and we are doing this, I mean, I was presenting our initial thoughts on a Europe strategy only this week. So this is sort of top of the agenda, and the risk analysis is really where we start. And we are removing countries due to the risk picture, because we are not the early mover like Scatec has done very successfully in many places around the world. We are Hydro. We do things in a slightly different way than the early movers. But when we go fully, and that is also what we expect to do here. So we need peace. Let's start there. We need peace, obviously, which is of course on top of the agenda for everyone. We need an economic structure that incentivizes companies to go in with predictability and reliability, because the investments that we are making are enormous, and we cannot have a situation where politics and change quickly and sort of kills the business case. We need a structural business environment that incentivizes us to go in working with partners in a good way locally. And we need political stability, which incentivizes international players to come in with investments. And if those things are in place, then a country will be able to compete, or Ukraine will be able to compete with its neighbors, which from my perspective it would be competing with, like Poland, Slovakia, etc., which are countries where we already have a presence in Hydro. So building better, let's not just look at it from a structural perspective. Let's also look at it from the perspective of the bodies and the structures that are there to get the players to enter Ukraine as a better market tomorrow.
Thank you. And going to specifics, of course, can be difficult because, as you say, you need a lot of parameters to fall into place before this can be a reality, which we understand. I think building a better business environment has been one of our key priorities from the start of, let's say, the discussion we've had after the war, that if we do this now, if we use this huge effort, it needs to result in a better in a much better business environment than we had before the war. So that is really a key priority, I think, from both the donors, from the governments involved, and from all private actors. But there's also a certain chicken and egg issue here, because of course, being not the first mover, but being a very strong second mover, will of course in itself potentially also enable you to move the goalposts a little bit. So we will at least encourage you to think along those lines, and the more interest and the more push we have, the easier it is to realize some of these things. So that's why it's important also for people to build this up a little bit gradually. I won't bother you with a sort of specific questions, because I think you will probably say war insurance like everybody else.
No, I wouldn't say war insurance, because I must admit that as long as there is a war, it's probably not where we go.
No.
But that doesn't mean we cannot start preparing. And for example, having strong project financing, for example, having partners that we know that we can work with, having a well-functioning power market, which already was addressed by Scatec. You know, those sort of structural things need to be in place before we can start considering it, and then of course the local competence and things like that are secondary.
And we need to prepare for this scenario. So we would very much like to have you in there as a discussion partner and giving parameters and input to how that should look like. So thank you for that. I want to switch quickly back to our public sector friends, who sort of hold a little bit of the keys to the infamous or famous toolbox. So I don't know, Mark, first of all, after hearing this, which I don't think is completely news to you, but still, any sort of immediate thoughts about what you can do as an organization, specifically for some of these scenarios, and any other comments to what you've heard? I know we're funny.
Yes. Does it work now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, what we can reflect from what was said by the colleagues on the panel here and on the screen is that the way ahead is a combination of sectoral reform and the right financial products in place.
Exactly.
And here, when we say about building back better, for us, yeah, it has material meaning and immaterial, yeah, in terms of regulations and the right business environment, the rule of law, and this is what we are working on together with other institutions. But also from material point of view, it triggers some, I would say, rethinking or reinventing the whole industries sometimes. Yeah, we spoke about energy a lot today, but then let's think about the fact that 1/3 of Ukrainian power generation comes from coal-fired plants. Yeah, or before the war. Yeah, now many of them has been seriously damaged. Yeah. And what it means. So will anybody rebuild them as a coal-fired, or the whole thing has to be rethinked and reinvented and has to be replaced with hydro, with solar, with wind, with bioenergy of all sorts. You've heard from Yulia Bereshenko from Astarta, and you've heard from Alina Sviderska that some of the projects renewable are already competitive on the market now. Yeah, so I think that's important way forward, and that would be a good opportunity and a good application of skills and technologies and capital that Norway has, and this is why we would encourage everybody, if not ready to move now, then indeed think about it and prepare for the move when situation allows.
Thank you, and I think that's a very good challenge to pass on to Norway, and we've, as I said, we've addressed the energy sector already in our efforts to generate tools for industry. So I think that's something we certainly focus a lot on, and I think is highly important for us. Christian, finally, any further thoughts from your side after hearing this? For instance, you were recently, you said, in Marrakesh, not alone, because there was the World Bank annual meeting.
About 14,000 people there.
So, and of
including
course,
these people, by the way.
Exactly, and coordination is of course important. But do you see things that are done in other countries that you might think is something we can do or not do? And does that give you, together with what you've heard now, any reflections that you can share?
Very good, Ketil. For two things. First, I have a previous life in international development affairs. And what we know is that Norwegian enterprises, you out there, you underutilize the multilateral development banks along all scales. One of the great importances of this meeting, I think, was that the EBRD came to us, to you, to present themselves, Jürgen Richting, Mark Magaletsky, on the overall build picture, but perhaps to this audience, what you presented, Mark, the concretes of what you're actually doing. What can you contribute? And building on that Norwegian companies, this is no criticism of Norwegian companies by all means, but however, that there is room for improvement when it comes to understanding the multilateral development banks, and now here they are. The Kissinger question, whom to call? These guys. Well, perhaps not you personally, but anyway, your people. That's a good start, isn't it? Answering your question also, what we can learn from other countries. Second, I was referring to the white paper that the government now is working on. It will be presented by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but it's a co-work made by, well, the head of government, of course, the Prime Minister, the Foreign Minister, the Defense Minister, the Minister of Trade and Industry, represented here by the State Secretary. And speaking as a former Secretary of the Foreign Affairs Committee in Parliament, I would say that I'd make a guess that when the Foreign Affairs Committee, Foreign Defense Committee, as it's called now, receives this in Parliament, they will perhaps invite to an open hearing in Parliament in order to discuss this white paper. I'm sure the defense industry, well, are there any representatives of the defense industry, by the way? This is an important industry in Norway too. But anyway, to you here, if you on the Stortinget, the Parliament webpage, you will probably find this invitation. If they decide to have such an open hearing, utilize that opportunity to come there to Parliament, to the general audience, by the way, and take your case to Parliament. They will then make a statement that will be discussed by the ministers, the relevant ministers in Parliament. So anyway, there is a picture stretching into the future now, how we could utilize this situation. I have had the privilege, and of course the State Secretary, we have had the privilege of being invited to the Confederation of Norwegian Enterprise as well as to the Norwegian Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce, Ketil. And well, I dare take it that I speak on behalf of the State Secretary too. But if I'm ever invited again, I would love to come after this white paper has been produced and discussed perhaps in Parliament to take the case further.
Thank you. We will, of course, be very, very happy to have you. And we do have also plans for Parliament. So we will definitely address that audience as well on behalf of our members and hopefully together with our members. So that's definitely something we will look into. I think on the question of whom to call, I think that is actually a pretty interesting question in this situation. And we will certainly also do our part to, make that phone book available and guide people through the system. I think we can do more efforts on that, both with you and our friends in government, but also from the private sector. So we will try to encourage that. So thank you very much. I hope this has given you some further insights and information about what is happening, what are the possibilities and opportunities, and what is also actually needed to be done that we haven't done so far. I would like to thank the panelists for your contributions. It's been very, very, very helpful and interesting. I would like to make also a short advert for the Rebuild Ukraine Expo in Warsaw, has been mentioned already. We have a Norwegian pavilion. It's fully signed up, so the interest is there. Again, underlining that, yes, people want to do something. They must be allowed to do something, so we will try to work on that. This is on the 14th and 15th of November. The Norwegian pavilion is fully signed, but there is still, of course, tickets available for anyone who wants to go and explore more about Ukraine. Finally, we're also trying to put together a small business delegation from Norway to Kyiv this side of Christmas, if we can get the right people and we can get the right to see the right people. So that is sort of immediate plans. So on that note, thank you very much again to the panel and the audience. And I think then we will turn to our closing remarks. Yes, and thank you, of course, again to Norad for hosting us. And for the ministry for inviting EBRD and to join us here today, State Secretary. Thank you very much. And then I would leave the floor to our partners in NHO, Director of International Affairs for NHO, the Confederation of Norwegian Employers, Kristin Hansen. And then we should also have the President for Tekna. Oh, there you are. Norwegian Society of Graduate Technical and Scientific Professionals, Elisabeth Haugstø.
Thank you. Let me begin by expressing our gratitude to Norad and the Norwegian Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce for putting this all together and hosting and bringing us here, and for giving us the opportunity to round off this important and informative event. I'm pleased to be standing here with you, Elisabeth, the president of Tekna, who embodies Norwegian technological excellence through its members. From NHO sides, we're pleased to join forces because I think that the partnership between employers and employees, organizations in Norway sort of holds. You talked about building back better in Ukraine. And I think that partnerships such as this is a recipe that, at least in Norway, has proven successful for the transition in working life in Norway. I would also like to extend thank you to the EBRD for your dedication towards engaging with Norwegian businesses, and I hope that today has been useful for you as well. I'm happy to see all the Norwegian companies present here today. Many of them are members of the NHO, highly valued. And I think this has been a very useful day in bringing us, raising awareness and building competence on how, as I think Christian put it, we can make better use from the Norwegian business side of the opportunities in EBRD and other development banks. Our companies possess valuable knowledge and cutting-edge technologies, but they come from the people that are employed in these companies, and many of those are members in your organization, Elisabeth. So I hand it over to you.
Thank you. Sorry, my voice is a little bit rusty. But yeah, I agree. It's like joining forces, not only here today, but as a whole, it means a lot. But before I delve into actionable steps, I would also like to extend Tekna's heartfelt gratitude to the organizations and contributors to this seminar here today. The NUCC, Norad, NHO, FTU, and of course the Ukrainian State Agency for Restoration and Infrastructure Development. Your unwavering dedication to fostering collaboration and progress between Ukraine and Norway is truly commendable. And also a special thanks to FTU, the Forum for Technology and Development Cooperation. As a key organizer, FTU brings a wealth of expertise and experience to the table, advocating for progress. It was a little bit hard with the handheld phone and this thing here, but just bear with me. In Tekna, we have a long history of development cooperation, working for transferring expertise and experience between Norway and so-called developing countries. FTU has contributed to the development and visibility of Norwegian development cooperation for a number of years. And obviously over the years, the forum has then developed into a forum where professionals share experiences and put current development-related issues on the agenda. So Tekna's members have a high-level expertise in civil construction and civil infrastructure. Good. Yep. And I highly value and encourage our members to contribute with their technical competence. So besides this, Tekna has supported our Ukrainian Trade Union College internationally, both economically and also politically. We are happy that several of them have been embraced as new members of Industrial Europe. Within the international organizations, we look forward to collaborating and utilizing their resources to secure workers' rights, both in Ukraine and in Europe as a whole. Even at the end of the war, even if the end of the world war feels distant sometimes, I believe that we can make a difference. I appreciate that topic is being raised here today. Individual actions are obviously very good, but together we can accomplish so much more. And I will give that word back to you then, Kristin. So let's tell us a little bit more about what steps NHO does in that matter.
Thank you very much. NHO is a member organization, and the call from our members to step up our work on Ukraine was loud and clear last fall and winter. That led us to establish something we call the Ukraine Network. And the interest has been tremendous. I think that more importantly than the fact that we have an NHO Ukraine network, it means that many of them are also members of the NUCC. It means that Norwegian businesses' interest in contributing to Ukraine reconstruction is enormous. Our role then is to catalyze and facilitate making that possible. And I think that discussions today have shown how possible and how difficult doing business in Ukraine is today. While Norwegian businesses can play an important role, we have to work together to make that possible. And then bear in mind that Norwegian businesses are unique in so many ways, but they need the same things that businesses need from all over the world, and Ukraine needs them. Catalyzing and scaling private investments in Ukraine should be on all of our interests and focus. We work hard to contribute constructively to Norwegian government policy. We have contributed with input to the white paper under production that our special envoy mentioned here earlier today. Only yesterday I was in Parliament myself and spoke to the Foreign and Defence Committee about next year's budget. All of our input can be read online and can be shared with anyone who hasn't already seen it. But those two issues have been mentioned repeatedly today. One is risk mitigation, and the other one is access to guarantees and loans through international banks, as well as through the Norwegian systems that we have in place, such as Xwin, which we do believe is an important addition to the international work that is being done. I think that I will leave it at that, but our engagement to Ukraine reconstruction will remain. We will be in Warsaw, as has been mentioned, and I can assure you that our members will not let us leave that work anytime soon.
All right, so as we conclude today's seminar on building Ukraine back better, we recognize the immense potential of positive change. Now, let's channel our collective energy into some actions. So first, this is actually pretty hard. All right, so international solidarity. Tekna expresses solidarity, obviously, with all Ukrainians in this time of war. Our thoughts are with all Ukrainian workers suffering. Let's continue to show solidarity with Ukraine and in ways ensure that the war is still talked about and obviously then not forgotten. Tripartite collaboration. In rebuilding of Ukraine, we call upon authorities, employers and employees to find collaborative solutions. Norway's success is a testament to the benefits of a tri-party collaboration. Let's encourage dialogue and collaboration for the common good. So, capital contribution. It is commendable that authorities provide funds and that we have contributed and that we contribute as employees and employers whenever possible. Every contribution, no matter what the size is, counts towards a building back better, stronger, and more prosperous Ukraine. Number 4, competence building, and a very important part of Tekna as a union and a trade union. Building a country requires competence. Let us include Ukrainian refugees into our work market so they can gain a meaningful employment and educational experience. Equally important is providing access to higher education to be used in rebuilding Ukraine. In taking these actions, we are not only investing in Ukraine's future, but we are also strengthening the bonds between Norway and Ukraine. Together, we can create a positive change and improve the lives of many. So, with that said, thank you so much for commitment to making a difference. So let us stand united and be the change we wish to see. Thank you all for coming here today.